Good afternoon. I'd like to call the February 6th, 2024 School Board Budget Work Session to order. Before we begin this afternoon, I would like to take a moment for two recognitions. We want to celebrate that this is Black History Month. Chesterfield County Public Schools honors diversity and the contributions of our Black students, teachers, employees, and families in our school communities, past, present, and future. It is more important than ever to ensure that Black history remains an integral part of our curriculum, and Black History Month is a time for all Chesterfield County Public Schools students to learn about and be inspired by Black heroes. During our February 13th business meeting, the school board plans to adopt a resolution in honor of Black History Month and the significant contributions of Black Americans to our nation's advancement. We also want to recognize that National School Counseling Week is February 5th through 9th. This annual recognition is designed to focus public attention on the contribution of school counselors throughout the United States. I believe I speak for our entire school board when I say that Chesterfield County Public School counselors are among the best of the best. Our school counselors make a daily difference for the children of Chesterfield County. School counselors are with our students for their happiest moments, like college acceptances, and school counselors support our students when the world seems bleak and overwhelming. School counselors have truly stepped up to support the diverse academic, social, and mental health needs of our students. National School Counseling Week is an excellent time for us to thank our school counselors for the vital work they do as an integral part of our school division and as caring adults in the lives of our students. Next, we have an update on Head Start from Dr. Fogelsong and Ms. Taylor.
Good evening, thank you. As required by federal regulations, we are here today to provide you with the annual overview training of ERSI, which I'll explain in a second, and the standards of the Head Start program. ERSI stands for Eligibility, Recruitment, Selection, Enrollment, and Attendance of the children in our program. We do have a coordinated enrollment program, which means that all of our applications for Head Start, Virginia Preschool Initiative, and Title I all flow into one application system. And then as we choose who to select for these programs, we look at their needs as well as their income and the local criteria. To be eligible for our program, it requires two specific things that we need from the parents before we begin. We have to verify the age. The child must be at least 4 years old by September 30th in order to be eligible for the program that year. For income, for Head Start, families must be 100% at or below the poverty line. We do have some extenuating circumstances that we can ask the Head Start office for permission to go a little bit above that, but that's only if our recruitment efforts we've exhausted those, and so we have that possibility of having more of those slots filled. We do also acknowledge categorically eligible students, so those are students that are considered homeless, in foster care, receiving TANF, SSI, or SNAP. For our VPI, or Virginia Preschool Initiative program, families' income must be at 200% or below the poverty line and or meet eligibility criteria. And then for Title I, there aren't any income requirements, but they must have some sort of need that we've identified through that local criteria. For eligibility determination, as I said, we do need the parents to provide us, or the families to provide us, with the birth certificate to verify age, as well as proof of income. Each family has an eligibility determination record that we keep at our office, as well as online through our Child Plus system. Copies of these documents are verified with our staff, as well as signed off from these parents, stating that the information that they've given us is accurate. As I said, we do have some local criteria that we do consider. After we've processed their income, they move to the interview phase of our application process, and that's where we will look at different local criteria, such as those categorically eligible students, the age of the child, age of the mother at the time of pregnancy, primary and secondary languages, parental status, trauma either with the parent or from the child, whether they've had abuse or neglect within their lifetime, an incarceration of a parent, witness to community violence, physical or mental illness in the household, or whether they have speech, developmental, or behavioral concerns, and finally, if they have an active IEP. Recruitment is the systematic process to identify families whose children are eligible for our program. Head Start, VPI, and Title I collaborate with local agencies, with schools and neighborhoods and businesses to inform families about our programs. I just sent out a lot of flyers to schools to go home with pre-K through fifth graders to get the word out, as well as we are putting signs out at those schools and in neighborhoods and local businesses. We are required to maintain an active and viable wait list if the number of applicants is greater than our enrollment opportunities. Selection has an emphasis again on those families with the greatest need. We are not a first come, first served program. That is why we are required to receive the information and documentation that we do. Through the interview and income process, we find the students with the greatest need, and then we place them according to the correct program. We must place Head Start students first. That is our requirement. And then VPI slots are usually filled next, as long as those students are found to be categorically or income eligible. And then Title I is filled. Enrollment opportunities are vacancies that exist at the beginning of the enrollment year or during the year as families move. Like I said, we must maintain full enrollment, and we are required within our program to fill those vacancies within 30 days. We do count attendance and monitor attendance actively throughout each month. With that attendance, if we see that attendance is falling below 85% for a classroom, we will look at those particular students and come up with strategies to help that family with resources that may provide them with more opportunities of getting their child to school and to school on time. A parent can voluntarily take their child out of our program. That happens whether they move, whether within district, out of district, or whether they decide that they want to go with a different program. But our pre-K office does not voluntarily remove, terminate, suspend, or expel children. Part of Head Start is that they have specific standards that we must follow. With these standards, they're broken down into different subcategories. So there is Subpart A, which goes over ERSI, which I just reviewed. Subpart B goes over our program structure. We are a center-based structure where they could have a home-based. Subpart C is in regards to the education and child development of our program, which looks at our learning environment, curricula, screenings, assessments, and data. Our health portion looks at our 45-day screenings, which are developmental, vision, hearing, and speech. We also look at family and community engagement. How can we engage our families and provide them with the necessary resources that they're in need of at this time? And that also includes workshops and orientations. And then finally, Subpart F, which discusses the additional services for students with disabilities. Part of the Head Start policies and procedures that we have here in Chesterfield is we have written up a guide for administrators called the CCPS A to Z Policies and Procedures for Administrators, which they can access. And we are working on policies and procedures that are not necessarily covered for the school environment, but cover the program as a whole. And those are considered the new CCPS policies and procedures that we're currently working on. The other information provided in this slide just again discusses what the Head Start standards are, any information memorandas that they give to us to provide us with updated information possibly on those standards, as well as the fiscal regulations. Are there any questions?
Thanks so much, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you.
Board members, any discussion? Ms. Chatters?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I did have a question regarding the capacity funded. I know we talked, it was 732 capacity funded, but is there a way, not this moment, that I can get the demographics of what those numbers look like for each school? So for example, we had talked about 196 for Head Start, 432 for VPI, and 108 for Title I. Is there a way to see that broken up by demographics at all?
Yes, I actually have a form that I can get to you.
Great.
It will include ECSE classrooms, early childhood special education classrooms, because we do collaborate and are trying to find more inclusive opportunities. So I have those listed as well.
Perfect. And then my last question is, when you mentioned the poverty line, do you have that dollar amount of what we're using to determine what the poverty line is?
We use the federal poverty guidelines, so I pull that up every year, and I have to actually enter it into the Child Plus system, so it automatically counts. Once we complete income for the family, it'll calculate it based on the family size.
Thank you. That was it.
Mr. Pronto?
Thank you. You mentioned the points system.
Yes.
Okay, is it 1 point per check mark on that list, or are the points greater for one attribute versus another?
They are pretty in line with the point systems. It's not a 1 point, but we do kind of range it depending on the severity. And then depending on how many is added up, we'll put that on the file as that child's point system. So for instance, lives with, if they are homeless, they may receive the full amount. If they are lives with, but it's voluntary, they will receive another amount, but it'll be a little bit less since it's voluntary. And then if they own a home or rent a home, then that would be a lower amount of points.
Thank you. And I don't know how that would break down with Ms. Chatter's question about the demographics and the points that are assigned. If there's one-sided one way versus another, I'd be interested to see that as well.
And you will, when I believe the application will be up and the selection criteria will be available in that document.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, Ms. Taylor.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
Next, we will have an update on compensation from Dr. Huff.
Hey, good afternoon, Ms. Heffron, Ms. Coker, members of the board, Dr. Darty. I'm pleased to be able to spend a few minutes this afternoon doing a little bit more detailed review of compensation as a recruitment and retention strategy. Compensation's a significant part of the superintendent's FY25 proposed budget. I'd like to start with some celebrations from recent compensation work. Of course, during the pandemic, compensation became an area of focus as we entered a different labor market, and we were able, with some compensation adjustments, to reduce vacancies in some key positions. One of those was bus drivers. The percentage of vacancies was reduced by over 80%, day porters by over 2/3, and instructional assistants, we reduced the vacancies there by about 40% over a 2-year period. We are seeing this year a little bit of a reduction in off-time teacher resignations. So that would mean resignations that don't occur at the end of the contract year. And we have seen an increase in our daily substitute fill rate. So how likely when someone wakes up sick or their child has to come home from daycare with an illness, how likely they are to have a substitute in their classroom. We've seen that percentage increase over 20% from our pandemic lows. We still have some challenges, though. One of those is vacancies, filling all of our teaching positions with certified teachers. There is a national shortage of certified teachers, and we're not immune to that. We are also competing with healthcare for some of our related service provider positions. So speech therapy, psychology, occupational therapy, physical therapy, those fields are really in demand for our students as well as in the healthcare sector. Of course, we experience some wage competition. Our roles are on-site roles, and sometimes those compete with more flexible roles in the private marketplace. We have a public budget process, and there are a lot of positives about that. There are a lot of stakeholders, a lot of transparency, but at the same time, it's not as agile as maybe a private corporation, and so that presents some different challenges when we're looking at responding to the market. Just as a quick review, maybe for some viewers at home of where we've been with compensation, this is the history of where we've been with our step scale positions. So these are teachers and school-based administrators. There was a salary study funded by Chesterfield County government. It was completed in 2021. It was based on a data capture of fall 2020, and the implementation began in FY22. Phase 1 of that study really focused on placing teachers on the new scale and crediting them for successful teaching experience. So the significant achievement there was decompression. So as we entered that study, one of the things we were hearing from our teachers is teachers that had been teaching 5, 10, 15 years were making salaries that were fairly similar to beginning teachers. And so that was sort of the significant investment and achievement of phase 1 of that study. It also linked school-based administrator pay to the teacher scale, and one of our most discrepant positions at that time was assistant principal, and we were having lots of turnover in that position, and we were concerned about that as a pipeline to the principalship as well. So that was another positive that came out of phase 1. Phase 2, we moved closer to the regional market with consideration to the wage market, which by that time was escalating due to inflation, and it included step progression and the statewide proposal for FY23. Phase 3 in FY24 included a market adjustment and step increase of 7% for teachers and school-based administrators based on state proposals and the inflationary environment. And you can see there on the slide how the beginning salary for teachers with a bachelor's degree and no experience has changed over those years. This chart shows Virginia teacher education enrollment. The blue line shows enrollees, and I did see where the feds had recently released the number of enrollees in Virginia for the year 21-22, and it was about 9,000. So if you could imagine that last line just staying pretty level there for 3 years in a row. And then the orange line is completers, and so those are people who finish the degree and finish their praxis and are eligible to become certified teachers. So you can see that number is significantly lower and somewhat declining. Certainly haven't had an increase there in over a decade. So that's kind of a long-standing problem. This data shows you a snapshot of subject area, and it looks like on the Title II site they're maybe working on updating that subject area for the more recent year. But this just gives you an idea. The large circle is the number of enrollees in Virginia, and then the smaller circle, the number of completers. For this year, 1920, there were only 32 math completers in the state of Virginia, traditionally trained math teachers. So you can see that this shortage problem kind of existed before the pandemic and then just kind of became exacerbated. Our scale of hiring in Chesterfield County is very large, and I know Dr. Daugherty talked about the number of meals we serve, the number of miles we travel, the number of facilities that we have. We also do a lot of hiring. So last year we hired almost 3,700 people, counting our full-time, part-time, substitute, coaching, temporary employees. Teacher is our most common job title. We have over 5,000 teachers, so they're in great demand here in Chesterfield County. Supply and vacancy factors are another thing that we look at. So Chesterfield County right now is the 4th largest school division in Virginia, And the 3 largest school divisions, all in Northern Virginia, routinely hire 2,500 teachers or more per year. So if we looked at the number of completers in the state of Virginia, you can see that over that 4-year period, there's a decline in, if you subtracted 2,500, there's a decline in the number of available candidates. Now, of course, these candidates live all over the state, and some may leave the state or choose not to teach even after completing. But when you think about that small number and 133 school divisions total in Virginia, it kind of gives an idea of the problem with supply of certified teachers. This slide shows our annual attrition rate of teachers, and you can see that kind of was pretty low during those first years of the pandemic where people were, kind of uncertain about what was going to happen next. And it kind of spiked coming out of the pandemic. And we think we have hit the top of that and started to come back down last year, but it's still not down to where we would like it to be, and particularly with the shortage in supply of certified teachers. Sometimes people ask, is your attrition similar or different among general educators and special educators? And that number is very similar. It's actually a little bit higher among general education teachers. That's also a different population base, a different number of general ed and special ed teachers. So it's really similar, and you can see that on these slides. Our cumulative attrition by month, this shows last year where we experienced some of that off-time attrition. So last year is the red line. And you can see as we went throughout the school year, now, in a system this size, you would always have some off-time attrition because people do have family emergencies, illnesses, relocations, and things like that. But that was a little higher than what we were used to seeing. And you can see this year that looks like that has come back down some. Our teacher starting pay is currently $52,421 for a bachelor's degree and no experience. In the proposed budget, the starting pay would be $53,978, so almost $54,000. And including step increases, the proposal would be for teachers to make about 4% more after step 0. And also to increase the scale so that would occur up to step 40. We are proposing a modification to the number of steps in the teacher scale. Our current scale, which was designed in that study from the fall 2020 data that was finished in 2021, had 35 steps. And of course, a lot has happened since fall 2020. And we have 67 teachers, I think, on the 35th step of our scale. And we would propose, in looking at our market competitors here, similarly sized districts in the state as well as regional competitors, that we extend our scale to step 40. We don't want to encourage early retirement. We would like to incent staying in the classroom a few more years, particularly in the shortage environment. And we also have a lot of people coming into the profession in different ways who may choose to work longer. The inflationary environment may cause people to choose to work longer. Change in Virginia retirement system may cause people to work longer. This is the FY25 proposed teacher scale. So you can see there the various steps and then the lanes for the different degree levels. And I wanted to highlight another classroom position, the instructional assistant position. For this position, we increased pay in FY22 and 23. And in FY24, we increased pay by creating a separate scale for instructional assistants. And we'd really like to continue our progress with this position. We're excited about that because it's a direct student contact role, and continuity is really important in this role. We have about 694 IAs, so almost 700, and about 484 work in either one of our special ed programs or as a one-to-one IA. And continuity is very important in those roles. There's a lot of training, there's a lot to learn, and we want to make sure that we're able to fill those consistently and not have a lot of unnecessary transitions. This chart shows you IA vacancies by month for the last 3 years. So in FY22, you can see that the vacancies were relatively high, and you can see the progress there that we made in FY23. And this year, we really made a lot of progress with the new scale. We also had a pretty successful hiring event at the beginning of the year, so that downward line, we really gave a lot of attention, the recruiting team gave a lot of attention to matching people's locations with schools, and that seemed to be pretty successful. So we'd like to continue our success there. And this shows you the cumulative instructional assistant attrition by month. We do have a fair amount of attrition in this position, and that's common at that price point in our graded range. And we would like to reduce that. We're running a little bit below last year, and people also ask about the step scale. The step scale goes to step 24, and we would like to extend it to step 25. We had a 24-step scale last year because of available revenue. We'd like to keep those experienced instructional assistants in the classroom. We have 92 instructional assistants on step 24, and we really need them. This is the proposed scale for next year. You can see that there are 2 lanes. In last year's budget process, 2 lanes were created. The IA1 lane is general education, IA2 lane is special education. There is a little bit more training involved for those positions. And then we have our graded range positions. These are our positions that are not included on the teacher step scale or proposed for a step scale: custodial, clerical, transportation, technology, administrative, and support positions. We completed a salary study in summer 2022 based on fall 2021 data for these positions, and implementation began in FY23. It was a joint study with Chesterfield County government, where both school and government positions were studied. The graded ranges differ from the step scales because they feature a minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum, as opposed to steps that are equally spaced. Phase 1 included moving to a $12 an hour minimum pay rate. Phase 2 included moving to a $14 an hour minimum pay rate. The study target was a $16 per hour minimum pay rate. We still have not reached that, but as you heard in the proposed budget, that is still a long-term goal, like a multi-year target. In phase 1, we did not, there was a late state budget adoption year, and we didn't receive all of the revenue to implement phase 1. So we did utilize some levers provided by the consultant to adjust to meet the revenue that we did have. We still made a lot of meaningful progress that year, and again, we decompressed those ranges just like the decompression that occurred with the teacher scale. But because of the revenue shortfall, there was a market discount calculation, so 3% was taken off expected salary for each person in the study. And while it did significantly improve compression, it did leave some compression at the top of the ranges for the more experienced personnel. We did go to a $12 an hour minimum pay rate. Then in phase 2, we moved to the $14 an hour minimum pay rate and implemented 7% increases. It corrected the 3% reduction to first that we had done before to meet the revenue target, and then included a 4% market and merit adjustment for current employees. It created a 2-lane step scale for instructional assistants as well. That was new last year. And this gives you an idea of what our attrition looks like for graded range positions. Again, I think the theme with these attrition charts is that maybe we've hit the peak there in 21, 22, and they're starting to come down. But again, it's still not as low as we would like. This is our cumulative attrition by month for our graded range positions. And you can see this year is running behind last year, but there's not quite as big a gap there as in some of our other position categories. These are the positions, though, that are more likely to compete with private market, IT, accounting, custodial. This year's proposal would move us to a $14.42 per hour minimum, and with a 4% target increase, inclusive of market adjustment and experience. And that concludes the part of the presentation that is afforded within the proposed budget. And then I would like to highlight a few of the compensation items that were listed as to be evaluated if additional state funding were provided. And one of those that we'd like to take a look at is substitute daily rate. This is a significant factor in teacher working conditions. It is required for teachers to access the benefits that we offer, such as sick time, Family Medical Leave Act, maternity leave. There has to be someone in the classroom if a teacher is on leave. And our target is a 90% fill rate, so 9 out of 10 times, if you were sick that day, a substitute would be there to cover your classroom, and that was a pre-pandemic kind of national standard. We have also learned that this is a very important pipeline of candidates for us. Many people get into the classroom, they're considering career switching, they like the work, they like the environment, and then they take another type of full-time position with us. So it's a strong pathway for career switchers. You can see in this chart last year, the full year, how many people we hired from our substitute pool. And most significantly, 63 became teachers, 36 became annual subs, 29 became instructional assistants, so many classroom positions. You can see this year we've hired even more people from our substitute pool. We've exceeded all of last year's hires in just the first semester. So we're excited about that. People in the classroom are excited by classroom work, want to work with our students, and are accepting some of the full-time roles. This gives you the breakdown of last year for the full year, how those substitutes that we hired as teachers, were they elementary, secondary, school counselor, special education? And then this shows the breakdown just for the first half of this year. So this shows our daily rate. Currently, it is $117.19. And you can see that the divisions around us, because daily substitute work, that is a regional market. And you can see that the counties around us are paying several dollars more. Our FY24 average market rate would be $128. So the proposal, if monies were available, would be to move to the Richmond regional market rate plus 3%. We do anticipate that our competitors may have some movement in this area as well. Last year, we matched last year's market rate and learned this fall that our competitors moved very assertively with their daily sub rates. This shows you some of the current success with our substitute fill rates. We have the high demand day on Friday and then a handful of other days throughout the year that are high demand. And you can see on this chart that was implemented partway through November in the 21-22 school year where that note is located. And you can see how the fill rate really changed even just with that implementation. And as we've continued to work on keeping up with the average daily rate, as well as, we have an employee interviewing substitutes all the time, you can see that that's really had an impact on our fill rates throughout the 22-23 and 23-24 school year. And during that time, we've continued to grow, so that means more teaching positions, more vacancies to fill and cover. Another area that we've identified for improvement is compensation for speech-language pathologists and related service positions. This would include psychologists, social workers, occupational therapists, and physical therapists. So all of these positions have to have specialized training, specialized licensure. Most of them require graduate degrees, and they're really in high demand, both in school systems and in the private sector and healthcare sector. We compete with our peers as well as the private market with these positions. Many IEPs require these services. Many of our students require these services, and if we are unable to hire the staff to provide them, then it does result in a significant cost for contractors. So with funding, the proposal would be to start to address these areas more assertively. And what that would look like would be to try to match the Richmond school market for these positions. It would significantly improve the midpoint and maximum of our current range, and elevate to a single hire lane based on the required credentials for licensure. And it would also slightly elevate the minimum salary, although this initiative would really just be a first step, and it's really aimed at retention. And so most of the folks that we currently have on board are, middle to maximum of those ranges. A final item that would be up for consideration, should additional funding be available, are the bonuses that are currently unfunded. And these are bonuses that are currently being provided this year in FY24. So one is the teacher bonus at high-needs schools that's currently being paid $3,000 in 2 installments, as well as a $2,000 bonus for instructional assistants and a $1,500 bonus for custodians. And I think that, anytime we talk about compensation investments, it's always good to remember our why behind compensation investments. Our students really benefit from quality instruction delivered by outstanding teachers, supported by caring instructional assistants. We want safe, on-time transportation to clean, secure learning environments, nutritious meals, specialized supports delivered by counselors, specialists, therapists, and interpreters if they're needed, and access to supported technology to prepare for careers of the future, and learning environments that are ready for our students regardless of growth. And we want to be able to recruit and retain employees who share this vision. And happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thanks so much, Dr. Huff. Board members, any questions?
First, thank you very much. Sorry. Thanks very much for the presentation. Just a couple questions. What is our current sub fill rate percentage at this time?
We're running in the mid-80s, so it's been running around 85% or so, 85, 86% on a daily rate. And the Fridays have been high, like 89, 90%.
Okay, very good. You mentioned that, for the attrition rate, we aren't where we would like to be. Looking at the 1920, we were in the single-digit percentage. Is that the area we would like to be? What were we prior to that?
I think the market has changed a lot, and our position control system has changed as well. But typically, pre-pandemic, what you were hearing is organizations like to try to keep their attrition 10% or below. The national attrition for teachers prior to pandemic, the average was about 8%.
Okay.
And, you can see during the pandemic, we were running a little lower than that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Ms. Chatters?
Hi, sorry, I have a few questions. So when we were talking about the healthcare positions, my question was, are they centrally located and then they go to schools as needed, or are they physically positioned at certain schools?
I think it's both, because if speech therapists, for example, are mostly stationed at schools. Some schools have more than one. Some schools may have an itinerant because, for example, if the number of students might qualify you for 2.5 speech therapists, and so maybe a therapist would share two schools, to serve that, two schools that needed an additional 0.5. So that's a very common service. When you get to services that are less common, where you don't maybe have concentrated programs, like physical therapy, for example, is a less frequently occurring service than speech therapy. So that person may have more schools, be more of an itinerant nature.
Okay, and probably not this information right this moment, but I'd like to see if we can get the number that we need for each of those special areas, the number of speech therapists and psychologists, just so that I can get a total number and where they go. The other question I had was about the IA average in the surrounding counties. I didn't see that in there. Do you happen to know what the surrounding counties are paying for their instructional assistants? Are we?
I don't.
Because you mentioned how we were competitive,
Yes.
trying to maintain competitiveness. I was just wondering, were we competitive in that market as well?
We do have those numbers. I don't know them off the top of my head.
Okay.
We also have a few differences from surrounding counties, such as hours per day and riding the bus
That was
for
my next
overtime.
question.
So there's a few differences in the models.
So for the step 0 pay scale at 19,000, I was asking, is that a full-time load, or it's based on X amount of hours for them to start out at step 0?
For IAs?
Yes, ma'am.
That's full-time, yes. But the general ed, I believe, are 6 hours, and special ed, 6.5. Head Start, I believe, 7.5. So the hours do range.
Okay. And then for the attrition that Ms. Coker mentioned, do we have like a trend analysis on exit interviews, or for those who elect to tell us why they're leaving, do we have some kind of data that shows, 15 left for this and 15 left for that?
I know in the HR literature, they will tell us that exit data is notoriously not accurate because people aren't necessarily invested in giving that information when they leave. We do exit surveys. We don't have a strong response rate to those, but every employee who's leaving does receive that. And if any employee, and that is anonymous, and then if any employee is leaving and would like to discuss their employment experience, we do set up an appointment for them. We don't interview every employee just because of the staff load and shortage there.
And for the bonuses, I know you mentioned the high needs schools, the $3,000 bonus, not necessarily for you, but just for the board in general. I'm looking forward to doing something to change that dollar amount to something a little more significant to get people to want to stay. Because I'm hearing they are happy with the 3,000, but I'm also hearing they'd like a little bit more, if we're so willing to consider it. So, and my last question is about the vacancies. So I thank you for the data that you sent me. I appreciate it. And the math is telling me that Dale District is at 43% of vacancies, 115.8 out of the 270.1. And so, not for right now, but I would like to know what subjects those are, if that makes sense, right? Because I have 8 virtual teachers at Meadowbrook High School and 10 virtual teachers at Falling Creek Middle School, and they are math teachers predominantly. And I saw the graph that we are woefully hurting on math teachers across the state. Not necessarily for you, but maybe for the board, I'm looking forward to getting creative on how we can make sure that all our schools have a math teacher in the building, because we are hearing that going from Algebra 1 in 8th grade to Algebra 2 in 9th grade, or Algebra 1 in 8th grade, is proving to be a challenge for some of our students, and it might have something to do with the way they learn. They need a physical teacher in the room and not necessarily a virtual one the entire time. So not necessarily for you, but just something for the board to consider, because that's what's going on in my district. That's all I have.
Thank you again for this. This is a lot of information. I really appreciate it. I'm looking back at the SLP and related speech to the pathologist that Ms. Chatters referenced. There were no numbers attached to that, and so I was wondering where we sat within, as it relates to other counties as well as the private sector. Because I would think that these people could probably go out and get something pretty decent.
Yes, and we do have data on the surrounding counties that we can provide. I don't think we can approach the private sector in 1 year, but we definitely did look at surrounding counties. And I think that this is a problem that our regional peers are experiencing as well. And so they may also be looking to make a move.
All right, thanks.
You're getting hit by all directions from the board. So thank you for hanging in there with us. I appreciate the question about exit interviews. The attrition obviously is of some concern, not only in Chesterfield County, but across the nation. When it comes to exit interviews, you had just stated that it's a survey that's sent out, is that correct, to the exiting staff member, teachers?
Yes, and a few years ago, we participated in like a consortium with VCU to kind of standardize questions, and then eventually the state adopted specific questions for the teacher exit interview. So that's what we're currently using.
But nobody is actually sitting down with the individual that's leaving and asking those questions. It's through a survey that's being emailed to them.
Yes, it's through a survey.
So we're at their mercy as to whether or not they're going to respond to it,
Right.
to gather the data that they may or may not disclose in the survey.
Right. And I think that was, really a choice because staffing in schools is very cyclical. So you could see by those charts, you have this spike and it's the end of the year and people typically make changes at the end of the school year. Well, we only have until June 15th to hire anyone in the state of Virginia from surrounding districts. So that spring staffing season, we'll typically have staff there late at night trying to make offers, trying to, beat the competitors and all of that to get everybody hired. And when you kind of look at, HR data and what the consultants tell you, they say, that information is not always reliable when folks leave. I do think that there are probably other ways that we could, learn about that, like maybe focus groups, for example, because everyone who's teaching, they know someone else who's teaching who left. And they're invested in staying here and in making the work environment as great as it can be.
No, I agree. And I think this is an opportunity for us as a county to do better when it comes to losing staff, for whatever reason. If we know that they're moving, right, we can understand that very easily, right? Their spouse got a job and they're transferring. Okay, we understand that. But if they're not happy with what's going on, or if it's a pay issue, or if it's fill in the blank, that's, I think, raw data that we need to know so that we can build upon what we're hearing from a group of folks, right? Not. Also understanding that somebody leaving just might not be happy, right? So, okay, we're going to take what they say and we're going to listen. But if we're hearing the same thing over and over again, that's what I'm talking about. That's the foundation that I think we need to build upon to understand more as to why. So to say that, well, it's a survey that's sent out and, they may or may not, I understand that and I understand time constraints. But we're constantly looking for opportunities to make ourselves better. I just think that that's something that we should look at, maybe under a larger magnifying glass, if you will. Just my 2 cents, but I appreciate the information that you've given today. So thank you for your time.
Any other discussion? Thanks, Dr. Huff.
All right.
Appreciate it. Next, we're going to have a presentation on the proposed FY 2025 Capital Improvement Plan from Mr. Davis.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Doherty. It's my pleasure to come before you today to discuss the Superintendent's Capital Improvement Program, which is a big cornerstone of our budget season. We're growing, we're thriving. Lots of great things are happening in Chesterfield County. School infrastructure needs to grow and to be maintained. So we've got lots of details to share with you, but the growth that occurred early this decade has been almost incredible in Chesterfield County. Weldon Cooper Center for Public Policy up in Charlottesville just released a study that showed 23,000 new residents in the county just since 2020. 23,000. That's larger than some of our small counties that are around us. And that translates to students that attend Chesterfield County schools. So we've also grown by about 6% over that time. We had the dip during the pandemic, and now we're going up. The county has a model, Stratus, which takes a look at where students reside and tries to predict where they're going, how many we'll have in about 5 years. They're predicting an increase of another 2,000 students. Our CCPS projections, which are a separate and independent exercise, came up with a similar number. I'll note that Weldon Cooper suggests that we may get 3,500 new students. So growth perhaps is slowing down a little, but it's still got a lot of momentum, and we've got to be prepared for it. We have a healthy CIP program in place. We're going to go into the details. It includes 3 new and 3 replacement elementary schools, 1 new and 2 full replacement middle schools, and 1 partial replacement, a new high school, and a high school expansion. So we look forward to continued dialogue with you on these comprehensive needs in the long-term plan. Policy does dictate the way that we do this, and we follow that. But here's some of the numbers in a graph. I'll point that number on the left, 274 instructional classrooms and modular units. We've got a lot of catching up to do just to get all of our kids in a safe, clean, new building that they deserve for their world-class education that they receive. So you see that trend line that suggests another 2,000 students or so. Maybe it'll be more, maybe it'll be less, but again, we still have new seats that we need and additional capacity to bring all the kids in the buildings where we want them. This is the same plan that was adopted by the board last year. We have shifted a couple of the dates as some of the realities of procurement and construction have come to bear. And we will have at least 1 briefing slide for each of these projects. I'll start with the left and spend a little bit of time on this chart. We're very excited to see Falling Creek Middle open in 2024. It'll be the first school that we've opened in 2 years. And then at least 2 schools per year are planned in this CIP program. The other schools that are underway are the Western Area Middle School and Davis Elementary. Then we move, and again, they will be completed August of 25. The following school year, 26, we have a couple of schools that we are busily designing now. Architects working hard on them. We're doing site plans. We're getting ready to do community meetings for both Bensley Elementary and the Western Area Elementary, another new capacity school that we need. Moving on to 27, the Western Area High School. We'll spend some time talking about it, but goodness, we need it. And it takes a long time to design and build one of these. So that process has taken a little longer, but we believe we can open it in August of 27. The design is well underway. Again, we'll talk about it a little bit later. Now we're going to move into projects that we still need and are in the program, but haven't gotten as far along in the procurement and planning process. You see 2 more schools in 27 to open. The Dale District Area Elementary. That's one that was not in the referendum, is really, really needed in that area of the county. We'll spend some time talking about it. We are doing some site analysis that I'll share a little bit about when we get to that particular project. The Old 100 Area Elementary is another new one that would be in a growing area of the county. We really think we're going to need that additional capacity. And if we were to start that in 2025, it could open as early as 27. Then we moved to 2 referendum projects listed for 2028, the replacement of Midlothian Middle and the replacement of Grange Hall Elementary. Those are our 2 100-year-old buildings. And then at the end of this schedule, we show an expansion of Thomas Dale's main campus and the completion of the Matoaka Middle School project, where the initial building opened in late 2019. So before we get into the individual projects, so some overviews in regards to the capacity and what we're going to gain and what the payoff will be. If you take that last chart and turn it on its side and group it by elementary, middle, and high and show it over time, this is a chart that we're showing you and has also been shown to county leadership, the Board of Supervisors. So you can see the seats that we're adding, the capacity that we need to get all of our children under roof. 2024, when we add Falling Creek, you see that adds 648. And I'm not going to recite all these to you because I just did in the last chart, but you can see the capacity being added over time. And if we do all this by 2029, we'll have added about 3,500 elementary seats, 2,600 middle school seats, and 2,400 high school seats. So that's about 8,500 seats, and that's what we need. This is another way to look at the school capacity. And again, another slide that's been shared with county leadership. And we'll go column by column, looking at each of the levels of our educational process. We have 67,000 seats of program capacity now. That's what we've reported to the county, what they're showing in these charts. So that's our seats. Recall that our K-12 enrollment is about 63,000. So we're at, when you look at the next column, 93.5%, with middle school being the most congested, but all of them well over 90%. The county's Stratus model, which would suggest another 2,000 students, if we do nothing, column 3 shows that we get up to 96%. We're over 100 for middle and closing in on it at the high school and elementary levels. Did a little arithmetic before today. If we get the Weldon Cooper 3,500 students, then we'd be at 99%. So our margin's very thin, and the way that we're dealing with it, unfortunately, again, is the modular units. However, if we are successful in doing this plan, we'll be down in the 80s. And we need those 8,500 seats, and that's the impact. We'd be 85% overall, again, with 87% in the secondary level and almost 83% at the elementary. A far healthier percentages in utilization when you consider the variability across the county. New housing, new citizens, it generates students. It's not all old adults like me coming to retire or anything like that to Chesterfield County. We're bringing in families. They come here to learn, to grow, thrive, get educated. The county's made some real strides in recent years in regards to publicly sharing the data as they are researching these trends. They're well aware of the growth things that I shared with you. And there's a link there. I'm not going to do an exercise and take it to us, but if you wish to do that on yourself in the future, you can see there's 7 big categories where you can look where the county's done some analysis. And that's from that population, the growth that I suggested. It includes some school enrollment and capacity. But the housing pipeline is awfully important to us because that's a real indicator of citizens coming into the county to live. And so many of our recent really blossoming communities were rezoned 15, 20 years ago and have now had the economic conditions in the last 5, 10 years to truly blossom. And that's what's driven the housing growth that we've seen. So what the housing pipeline is showing us are developments that have not only been rezoned and approved by the county, but in which the county believes they're seeing significant action from a developer to bring those projects to fruition. So over 5 years, they show a timeline of expected construction of different types of housing units. And we and they can calculate the student yield that those developments, and they can break it down into housing type, single family, townhome, apartments. All of them have kids that need to be educated. Some generate a few more than others, but all of them have children. They have them at all levels. And so we can see with our school zones, doing a bit of analysis, whether a new development's going to maybe generate 20 kids or 220 kids. And so, again, those cases will continue to, I think, be zoned and approved, but when will they be built? Well, look around, take a drive. Dr. Doherty tells me every day about places he's been where buildings are sprouting forth. And it's great for the county, it's great for CCPS, but we've got to invest in the buildings that they need. So given that little high level, we're going to spend some time talking about each of the projects. Falling Creek Middle. I can't wait to cut the ribbon, or to watch you guys cut the ribbon. August is going to be here before we know it. It's under roof. I just walked through this building 2 or 3 weeks ago. When you see some of the large areas that are described on the left, and as you move from the front of the school, the cafeterias on the left, one of those first early large, you can see where the rooftops are opening. Then you go to the right and you see 2 gyms, the full competition gym and auxiliary gym, large, beautiful auditorium on the left. You get past the media center and then back to the 3-story classroom wings, which are going to hold 1,800 kids. So at this size and this capacity, this is going to be the first of 2 schools that will be the largest middle schools in Central Virginia. So very excited to open this building. It's desperately needed. We have an entire grade level at Falling Creek Middle that has resided first in individual trailers, and then thanks to Dr. Doherty's initiative, we've at least gotten them into the safer mega trailers over the last couple of years. An entire grade level. That's where they learn, that's where they eat. And they will have a far better chance of the education they deserve when they move into this building. And that's going to be a time for celebration. We are going to keep that old building for 2 more years. So that will delay the construction of the new 8-lane track and the playing fields and tennis courts, but that will be constructed after Bensley spends their 2 years in the older building. And again, it's going to be a great day. And then a year from then, we're going to open that other middle school, the one that we need in the west end of the county where so much growth has taken place. This all new seats. We're not replacing a school. We're building a new one. Very similar design, same prototype, same architect as Falling Creek. It's coming out of the ground. It's on progress. Also the same contractor is building both of these middle schools. And I think most folks are aware that Tomahawk Creek has been bursting at the seams for a while. We had an initiative to add a mega trailer. We converted locker pods into 8 additional classrooms. So we've done everything we can to support that school. The staff has done great out there taking care of these kids, but they need to spread their wings and have a new building to go to. And it'll impact not only Tomahawk Creek, but probably Bailey Bridge and maybe a ripple effect over to Midlothian. So we look forward to getting that one done. Redistricting, something that you always hear about. Is my kid going to the new school? Am I building a house where the new school is going to be? Well, you're going to go to a great school regardless. That's the answer in Chesterfield County. But we'll do that analysis. Staff's going to start this summer. We're going to talk to you and get a decision this fall so that we can see those boundary lines for this school. We have an opportunity to name the school in the near future. Mr. Smith has chatted with a couple of you about that process. We'll reach out to the communities of the 3 schools that we think will perhaps send students there and get some nominations, do a little bit of voting, and you'll get to decide. I think that's, was that April that we suggested they might vote? May. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Let's chat about the elementary schools. We've got a great successful program. We opened 9 schools under a previous prototype. That was a good program, excellent program. This one's going to be another step up. We're really excited. It's going to be a 2-story building, and so that's going to be new to Chesterfield. Slightly larger in regards to square footage, a capacity of 1,000 students, all of the things that we need for education of our youngest students. 50 general classrooms, resources, art, music as you expect, beautiful kitchen and cafeteria, gym with full court, performance stage, media center, and the site work's going to include the full set of playgrounds, hard courts, playing fields, and areas for buses and pedestrians and parents to drop off and pick up their kids in the afternoon. So you see 6 projects listed there that will use this prototype, and we hope to complete all of them here. What's that? The next 4 to 5 years. So let's chat about some of those individual sites. Davis, wasn't it exciting to, for you to put the shovels down and see the teachers pick them up and the kids pick them up and throw the dirt? And that was a really good community event. And I appreciate everybody's support on that. And Dr. Batts and team are very excited, and they are moving the dirt already. So this project's underway. It's a fairly aggressive timeline for Kenbridge to have that thing complete. And so you can cut a ribbon in August of '25. And it's going to happen, and it's going to add capacity. Again, a school that was well over capacity, very outdated, lots of modular classrooms were being used there. So we're going to get them all under roof, and we may be able to do a little bit of redistricting because this school has neighbors that are also in need. When we talk about the Dale district, this one might be able to help out Dale a little bit too, as you look down towards Chalkley and some of the opportunities to spread the students into the capacity that we do have and that we're building. Bensley, this one's been on the list for a while, and it's coming to fruition. We're doing some detailed analysis and designing already of the site, of the building. We're going to meet with the community on March the 6th to talk about some colors and get them really excited. But Dr. Wilson and her staff have been excited for some time because we've been working with them for about a year in regards to designing this school on the existing site. It's a fairly small site. We don't have the ability to build on site and keep them there. So that's why those students are going to go to the old Fallen Creek building for a couple of years, but the rewards will be worth it. This school, along with A.M. Davis, does have interesting program capacity calculations when you look at we are going to give them the smaller class sizes that they need at the K-3 level. That's an important program to us. So that does influence, how many students can go in X number of rooms. And additional supports, we got the trailers that we need to go away. And again, there may be an opportunity to redistrict a few students, perhaps from Falling Creek Elementary. Not a done deal, of course. You're going to get to evaluate that when the time comes. So the next elementary I'm going to talk about is the Western Area Elementary, but I thought we'd do a little geography and show you a map first. This is the western edge of the end of the county, and to the east or right-hand side, you see Route 288 kind of going north and south, and out from there comes Hull Street and everything associated with it. And Swift Creek Reservoir, I think I see Cosby High School even, but if you turn right off of Hull Street onto Otterdale, you go past neighborhoods on the right and the left. The big Magnolia Green neighborhood is there, the bottom left. And then as Otterdale hangs a hard right and goes further north, and Duval moves to the left, you're getting close to what's called Upper Magnolia Green. That was rezoned for many, many purposes in the county, but we're just glad because we really, really need schools here. And this is where so much of the growth is taking place. And so I mentioned the middle school, and so that's of the 3 stars there, the upper right, and that's at the end of Westerly Boulevard, or is it Parkway? Westerly, that goes through that neighborhood, and that's going to be expanded. You see the dashed lines. Those are roads to be constructed by our partners in the county. And we need those roads to be completed. We need water, we need sewer. So tremendous partnership between us and the county to get all the infrastructure in place, not just the school buildings. So that elementary school will be just to the west of the middle school. They'll be contiguous. They'll be able to see each other. They'll have a trail that connects them. They'll probably be able to park at the elementary and come to vice versa to occasions at either school. Then as you move south, you'll get to the high school site, which is almost 120 acres in land that the county owned. And so we're going to fill that up, but it's not all going to be schools. The county's planning to build a library there. There'll be lots of housing that will continue in that area, and that housing and growth is why we need the schools, in addition to all the other growth that's occurred. If we were to shade what's been built in the last 10 to 15 years, it would take up a tremendous amount of this map. So moving back to the individual projects, Western Area Elementary, just a couple of diagrams here from what we believe the prototype's going to look like in regards to a corridor with an extended learning space outside of a classroom to the learning stair. That's going to be a big feature of the media center in the bottom photograph. Got a note about the housing pipeline units, and several of these have notes about how many housing units are expected in the next few years, which means hundreds of students. And I've got, again, a footnote here, which it's not footnoted on the other slides, but it's a second opportunity. If you want to click and see the county data report, you can do it from here too. But this is under design. We know what it's going to look like, where it's going to be. There's a site plan. It's being coordinated with the county, and we're going to break ground before this year's over. We're breaking ground on Bensley probably in September, breaking ground here in October. And again, since it's a new school, there definitely will be a big redistricting because it's going to relieve two of our overcrowded schools. We built Mosley at capacity, or opened Mosley at capacity. And they have a mega trailer. Old 100 opened just in 2019. They have a mega trailer. And Grange Hall kind of has part of its zone in the middle there too. So it's going to impact numerous schools. It's really, really needed. And once this one's done, it's going to be a big step towards providing us the seats that we need in the western end of the county for our elementary students. But we won't be quite done. At the high school level, what's Cosby at? 2,600 students, sir? Yes. And we installed 2 mega trailers there, so 24 classrooms. That staff has done an outstanding job of continuing to educate our students out there and host all the events despite the congestion and all the cars and buses and students. But they need room, and it'll be by the time we open the school, it'll have been 20 years since we opened a new high school. And exciting, it's well underway. We hired the architect about a year ago. We have a programming phase, which is complete, so we know how many classrooms we're going to have of the various subjects, and the detailed design is underway. We've conducted schematic design, is what it's called, so we can show what the hallways are going to look like and where the classrooms and all the major fixtures and facilities are going to be. And the site plan's always interesting with the high school because you're building a football and track stadium complex. You're having a varsity baseball, varsity softball, opportunities for tennis and soccer and all those other outdoor activities. And with the volume of traffic coming here to a high school, it's significant to get adequate parking, bus loops, and so forth. And that process is also underway. So that's like the first 3 bullets. Procurement will start later this year. Then we'll get our bid and we'll have another groundbreaking in 12 months from now, hopefully, to get this one underway. And open it in 27. This is another one where people want to talk redistricting. I mentioned the middle school earlier. Same thing's true here. You will make that decision in the fall of 26. And we think this is going to relieve more than Cosby. You build a school with 2,400 seats, you're not just going to draw from one school. So there will probably be a domino effect across the entire northern tier of the county and a good, and all the western peers that they have. So that'll be an exciting time when it comes. Our team's going to focus on getting the building done and coordinating with the county on all those infrastructure projects that I mentioned that are associated with it. So now we're into projects that we haven't started design yet, and funding's not necessarily as clear. The Dale District Area Elementary, there's 5 elementary schools there with 69 trailers. There's going to be more trailers probably in the next few years if we don't do anything. And Falling Creek, Hopkins Road, Beulah, Henning, and Chalkley. All of them are anywhere from 10 to 17 trailers. 19, I think, might be the max at Hopkins Road. We expect more students there. It's not an area of the county where population is going to shrink. We're continuing to grow. And again, we need those smaller class sizes at most of these schools. They're Title I schools. They need that more intensive education and more adults in the building, and they're going to get it when we build these buildings. Site evaluation is underway with county staff. And there's dialogue at the appropriate levels. That process will be confidential. But if you look at a map, that corridor coming up Iron Bridge Road looks like to be the sweet spot. Doesn't mean you couldn't go a little east or west, but there are some sites that may be available. The county will need to find a willing seller also, once we identify our top few sites. And we got to fund it. But Mr. Meister and I have been chatting. We've certainly heard overtures from the county that they know that this wasn't in the referendum, but they would help us, perhaps find additional funding to get this project underway. Right now, they haven't turned the spigot on, but that news may or may not change in the next few months. We hope it does, and encourage each of you to work with your counterparts to help us fund not only this project, but some others that haven't necessarily been funded. But this one's really got my attention, and I really want to see it underway. Old 100 Area Elementary. There's a development that's not even truly in the housing pipeline yet, but there's a big plan for an area called Roseland in Midlothian. And it's been chatted about for a while, but a conceptual plan was approved by the county in the last 12 months, and that's another 4,500 units. And so the growth that's already organic to the approved cases out there has strained this school. It's well over capacity. We have a mega trailer. It's going to get hopefully some relief from the Western Area Elementary, but we really see the need for a second school. The site location's unidentified. We could build another school directly on that site, but if another site turns up that's affordable to the county and would allow us to have 2 really fine attendance zones and bus routes, we would certainly consider that also. But this one's also unfunded. No movement yet in regards to finding funds for it, with the Dale District one being a bit higher priority. Now, we could pull it off and we could do it in that same year, as we showed in that, but that would have to have some movement. But if there's a candidate for one of the elementary schools to slip to the right, this would be the one. Then we moved to what the schedule showed in 2028 are 200-year-old buildings. Midlothian Middle. Is there still growth in Midlothian, Ms. Hudgens? Yes, ma'am. and it's planned. They're not over capacity, which is good, but they would be if the growth continues. And it's just such an old building. Its time is coming. It's partially funded by the referendum. We have done some site analysis with the county that's sort of come to a standstill, but that'll really depend on all the important decision makers, such as both of our boards, to get together and make some decisions with the county in regards to where it should go and how the rest of it would be funded. Grange Hall, the second 100-year-old facility. Really neat old building out there in the western end of the county. Beautiful place to visit, but usually when I go, it's because there's a facilities issue. Imagine that. And so this does eventually need to be replaced. There's growth, of course, in that area of the county. The other projects that we mentioned, I think, will probably take some students, so we'll have fewer students, and this one won't necessarily be bursting at the seams, but it will need to be replaced. And you see the housing pipeline noted there, and the fact that I think it's likely that it'll be built on a different site. Moving to our last couple of projects that we're showing at the later stages of the CIP. So the Thomas Dale main campus expansion, that would enable all the students to go to the same building. Capacity would kind of remain the same because the west area building, or the west campus, has a capacity that will basically be translated over here for a final capacity of 3,000, which is about the capacity of those 2 buildings today. There are some land constraints. This picture shows you all the athletic facilities, and I think the ultimate solution will be what to do with that entire campus that includes the west area and Curtis Elementary, a 60-year-old building. So we're going to have some more dialogue, probably first at a personal level, to talk some options and alternatives. But I think we need to think about all 3 of those buildings when we consider a plan here. So I'll leave it at that, unless Ms. Coker wants to talk some more when questions and answers come. And finally, the Matoaka Middle completion. We need to replace the building. We don't need a lot of extra seats. Will there be growth in Matoaka? Probably will be someday. I'm showing 2 pictures here. The one on the left shows the new wing that we built and opened in, I believe, December of 2019. And so got a lot of great classrooms out there, good modern facility, and in front of it is a 60-year-old building with everything that comes with a 60-year-old building. And we have thrown I'm not going to say thrown, we have invested some major maintenance dollars into keeping that building up and running. But eventually, it needs to be completed also. And so what I've shown you on the right here, which wasn't in our earlier presentation, is a diagram of what the a smaller middle school prototype would look like, which was built at Manchester Middle. So that wing that you see here is the left upper portion of that orange outline that you see. So that's we would add on to that if we were to make the decision to build the Manchester prototype there with its capacity of 1,100 students. And we show the parking and so forth. The track was actually already built. That was something that was wrapped up a little bit after they opened that wing in December of 2019. So that's all the projects that we had. A little bit on funding. VPSA has provided a generous dose of the funding needed for the two middle schools. I'll just toss out, that the hard cost for doing those two buildings is $80 million each, so the 130 went a long way to that 160, but then you've got soft cost in regards to construction management and architects, so, total bill for each of those is probably about $100 million. Bond referendum, thank you, citizens of Chesterfield County. Those of you who were on the board and supported it at the time, and those of you who were out in the community working this, look at all those projects that are at least partially funded by that bond referendum, $375 million. We don't know how far that's going to take us. That last bullet down there about monitoring construction market volatility, prices have gone up. And we learned from the Davis Elementary bid, which since it had $25 million of federal funds, it was needed to go to Davis-Bacon stipulations. So we believe that boosted the price tag for it. So we'll be very curious to see what these next two elementaries are going to cost that that you're going to be breaking ground on. So that bidding process, we're going to learn a lot in the next few months in regards to what these future elementaries are going to cost us. And we got our fingers crossed for the high school. Huge project. We do some benchmarking with other projects in the state, and we look at cost per square foot. And so we believe that this is probably going to come in north of the original estimate of $135 million. How far north, we don't know. But we got to monitor that. We got to continue to partner and talk to the county because that term gap funding is needed. The 375, I'm just repeat myself, won't do everything that's listed there now. But we'll get a lot of it done. It will get a lot of it done. And we do have great partners in the county that realize, that these projects are needed. And I'm confident that they're going to work with us, especially for the new capacity jobs that need to get done and eventually those replacements and completion jobs. So I think my next slide is major maintenance. So let me pause here and see if y'all would like to chat any about the construction projects before we get into HVAC and things like that.
Anybody have any questions? Is that all? No.
I told you I'd be a little more deliberate today.
I have a question. So I was just doing some back of the envelope math here. So 274 of our classrooms are in trailers. And if Davis, the Davis prototype will hold 50 classrooms, then we're talking like 5.5 whole 2-story elementary schools are in trailers right now.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure that, because that just seemed, I knew my math had to be wrong, but.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you look at just those 5 in the Dale District, 69 classrooms, that's more than one school.
Right.
We're going to need more than that one school. I've got some other ideas there for you too. But
Oh, good.
and I'll go ahead. That's not really going to get done until we do a pre-K center and we replace Chalkley and Henning with new buildings. So I think that's the long range. We've got other 60-year-old buildings. I mentioned Matoaka Middle. That's your next generation of projects. You didn't ask me, but we've got 6 schools that are about 60 years plus, and it's Curtis is one of them, Bon Air, Matoaka Middle, and those 2 elementaries, and I'm probably leaving one out. But that's your next generation. So, this CIP is going to take us a long way, but to really get it in all the pockets of the county, it's even more than what we're presenting today.
Yeah, no joke. And then the 85% capacity that we're projecting when all of this has been implemented, tell me that gets rid of the trailers. Like that's 85% capacity. We're not, or the 8,600.
Depends on how much growth we get. Do we get to 2,000 students or do we get 3,500? So
Okay.
it's going to take a big bite of it.
Yeah.
If you ever get to 0 trailers, show me a district that's there.
And like you said, yeah, it's where there's a new school, there's new excitement, and there's a lot more families.
We'll see who continues to move to Chesterfield and build homes, and we just got to keep the train rolling.
I know.
But and still, we're catching up, and your point's a great one, and some good arithmetic there.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Davis. Any other questions?
Yes, of course, I had some for you, Mr. Davis. So with the numbers, thank you for the information on the trailers. It helped. So rough math here, Dale District is at 80, almost 90 of the trailers of the 274. And so I understand what was put into the bond referendum for 2022. So it's probably not a question you can answer, just something that I'd like the board and the county to listen to and the constituents to listen to, is that if we want the Dale District to get a little bit of relief, then we need to start advocating for Dale District schools, right? We have almost 46% of the trailers in our district. And so I appreciate what we've done with the last board for Falling Creek Middle School. Not really happy with the order in which the rest of Dale District is going to get addressed. But based on the numbers that you provided, we have quite a few schools that are over 100% capacity, as you already identified. So a needs-based priority is what I'm asking for the board to consider, right? If you're going to say that Dale District has the most, and then the numbers support that Dale District has the most, but we're not on a definitive list. We're on the, if we get some, if the county finds some money, then we get the Dale Elementary School, right? And then we're not on the list again till after 2028. We're not going to get better, right? So I'm just asking that we make a priority list internal, so that if we do find some money, that we start making the ones that are busting at the seams, that have the most trailers, the priority on the list, so that not only are the Dale District students not in schools that are too crowded, in schools that have virtual teachers, in schools that have the most subs, that we actually get the quality that everyone else is getting. So not for you, just for those of us who are listening and paying attention, my board members, to consider when I start asking for it. Thanks.
Understood. And that other 60-year-old building is Chalkley.
Mr. Davis, I greatly appreciate the presentation, and for public knowledge and for the board to just say, we've had a lot of conversation about just the area in Chesterfield and how much it's grown, housing. And I think you made a comment earlier that Dr. D had commented every time he goes somewhere, he's seeing developments being built or townhomes or condos being put up. So just as a point on that, there was a bill in Richmond, State Bill 652, that failed committee. It failed by a vote of 3-12, 3 for, 12 against. The bill would have given the county the opportunity to say no to development because of the overcapacity of our schools and the inability to play catch-up in a time that made sense from a financial standpoint. I find that to be a shame that we have that opportunity to stand up for ourselves as a county and say no to development until, not no 100%, but until we can play catch-up. And we're not in that position. And so we're faced with a very difficult challenge, both the county and the schools, to figure out how do we eliminate 48% of trailers being in one district? How do we build fast enough and gain the funds for that from our taxpayers? And so we had an opportunity, and I hope that there are folks listening to this that will rally again for something similar to that, so that we can get that passed in a bipartisan effort to help control and put into measure that growth. Chesterfield is a great community. We don't want to turn people away. They're moving here for a reason, and we want to welcome them with open arms, but we have to be able to educate children in an environment that is conducive to learning. having overcrowded classrooms and schools that are above capacity throughout the county in our 5 magisterial districts, in my opinion, is simply not acceptable when we have the opportunity to do better. And so this was presented forward. It got voted down. I hope that it comes back up again at some point in time and it gets some more motion behind it. So for those listening who are interested, I would highly encourage you to take this opportunity to contact your delegate, your state senator, and really advocate for this so that we have the ability as a county to direct our path forward by votes, and not leave it up to a state to tell us what we can and cannot do in regards to our communities. So that's the challenge we're facing. We're partnering with you, and we greatly appreciate you and your team and all the efforts that you put forward. So thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, sir.
Any other discussion?
I'll move forward.
Please proceed.
We'll chat a bit about major maintenance. Dr. Doherty introduced this topic to you just a week or so ago, and this is so much and so important. Again, it was something that was deferred, and we've made a lot of great strides. I'm going to chat a little bit about what we've done, where we need to go in the future, and the fact that it needs funding also. This is a budget presentation, so. We identify projects. John Thuma's team, facilities director, you'll eventually meet him, I'm sure, conducts preventive maintenance. That's one of the budget initiatives that's kind of gotten us out in front so that we understand what's happening at our buildings quarterly. First with HVAC, and now we do it with roofing and electrical systems. And so that uncovers and tells us, where we may be having issues in the future, because our goal is always to replace something before it breaks. That's not been the reality. I'm going to flip to the other side there, facility condition assessments. There was an effort 2017, 2018, engineers were brought in as consultants. They looked at systems throughout all the buildings and graded and tried to assess when the end of the useful life would be for everything in the building, from the toilets to the fans to the HVAC to the roof to the paint. And that showed a tremendous backlog of need, and it showed it over time. So there's this 20-year spreadsheet that suggests how much money would need to be invested at each of these respective schools if we were replacing systems and components at the end of their useful life. There were some really large numbers in that, and we're continuing to use those reports, but I've challenged John and his team to do some of that ourselves. We know the buildings, and we've developed some great internal expertise. We've got some good contracted partners. So we continue to update those so that those two, the blue and the green, kind of go together from John Thuma's team to help us know what needs to be fixed and when. Then we get other initiatives that come to us. We didn't replace cameras when we had a security initiative. Now we're getting ready to do that, but the initiative to enhance security didn't really have anything to do with facility condition assessment. It was a need in the reality of today's environment that we needed to protect our buildings and our students and staff more. So therefore, we invested some of our major maintenance money into security initiatives, not only the cameras, but access control, the revisions and renovations that we're doing to our vestibules. And so there's many prongs of that, and we could spend another half hour on security, but I'm not going to do that today. But also the mega trailer projects. That was equipment that we procured and used major maintenance money to do that. So those were some of the division types of initiatives that come up and that we need to fund, and this is how we fund them, is through major maintenance and conduct them. This is an eye chart. We've got 10 categories, and we're showing over fiscal time, what we've spent. The stacked bar is the total spend in each of these fiscal years, and the individual stacks within it shows how we spent money in each of these 10 categories. The brightest green reflects HVAC. That's the biggest ticket item, and we've done a tremendous amount of HVAC work, replacing water source heat pumps in up to a dozen schools, We just did the entire James River High School HVAC system this past summer. There's numerous ones, and that continues. We've done a lot of good catching up, and we've learned a lot. Then you see the blue bar, how it's expanding. That's roofing. Roofs definitely have a limited life, and unfortunately, you can see it when they begin to leak, and we can repair certain things, but they have a lifespan. They need to be totally replaced or restored. We have some great techniques to do that, and so I don't want to go through each of those bars, but the security bars in there, that's the darker pink near the top, and the equipment that I mentioned, that's the darker red at the bottom. So again, it's good to see that the trend has been up, and I think we've been responsible in selecting the projects that are needed as systems are beginning to come close to failure, or we have initiatives that I mentioned earlier. So the red line here shows over time what we've spent, and FY24 is there kind of in the middle where we are today. And the smaller line at the bottom is the annual operating budget transfer. And so that's been hovering in the $6 to $9 million a year. It clearly doesn't pay all the bills, but we accept it, we want it, and we'd love to see it grow. So where'd all the money come? The county really helped us. 2020, when we started showing a bit of competence in the ability to manage projects and predict the work that we needed to do, they found a $57 million bond for us to do major maintenance. And so that was a great shot in the arm and increased our balance. And we then felt we could really go out and do some jobs that had been deferred and needed to be done. Everybody hates what the pandemic did to us, but we did get many grants that also were directed towards buildings at schools and so forth. Scott could recite them all to you, and some of them were as large as $12 million. But they have helped us have money in our coffers to do this work. Now, what's that declining line? That's our fund balance. Thanks to all those grants and the bonds, we were sitting on about $60 million a year ago, and as we spend down this year and get our transfer, which is going to be closer to 40, and we have enough funding in that balance and with a transfer to get through 25 and spend probably about 30 million, which is what that solid red line is showing. But if we don't get anything additional, we're concerned about once we get to FY26 and beyond. That annual transfer of $6 to $9 million a year clearly wouldn't do everything that we need. Well, what do we need? CRV, current replacement value. 67 buildings, going to be 68, then 69 and 70. It's $2.5 to $3 billion to replace all of our buildings. And best practices would be to spend 2.5% of that current replacement value on major maintenance. The county's financial document says, yes, we, the county, are doing that in general government. And what would that look like for schools? Well, what I'm showing you is what 1.5% would look like, which would be over 40 million a year. And so that would require significantly higher transfers to keep our balance up so that we could achieve that. I'm not going to show you the 2.5. We've shown that to previous boards, but it's frankly a number I don't think we would be able to achieve. But again, if you really want to do it and do it right and do it well, you'd be spending considerably more. So just sharing that for your information as you grow into your positions or continue that what you've been, this is an area that we need to continue to invest in. The risk of repeating myself, we're looking good for 24 and 25, but by the time we get to 26, we really need to partner hard with the county staff, because I don't think we're going to continue to see the pennies from COVID in the future, but we don't know what the big picture is at the federal and the state level, but this is something we got to do with the county. So I think I'm done now. Any questions on major maintenance or a second chance at the construction program?
Board members, any discussion? Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for the presentation. And yeah, it's a lot to take in, and we really do have a lot of, oh my gosh, I don't want us to get underwater on major maintenance again. So I do appreciate all the work that your office is doing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And one thing just to add to that is what I appreciate is that we're obviously learning about it. We learned about it last year. We're talking about it again this year so we can continue those conversations to be proactive so we can make a plan before FY26 arrives. Thank you.
I do have a question in regards to all the new schools that we're going to be building between now, and I think it was 29 on the sheet
Yes,
that
sir.
slide that you provided, factoring in just the cost of upkeep, in addition to the schools that we currently, obviously, will continue to be running. You mentioned about, I think it was FY26, needing support as far as the finance is concerned, with being able to maintain, correct?
And that's true of major maintenance and regular routine maintenance that our facility staff does.
And do we have?
If I take you there.
I'm sorry?
I said I could take you there too, but as we anticipate growth, whether it's in our student population or the millions of square feet that we maintain, those workforces and the resources associated with them need to grow also. And a facilities director has mapped out a path. And again, we've got if we were to show you that routine maintenance, you'd see, it's kind of another good news story in that our budget has gone up, but there's always more that we could do, especially in areas such as that you might consider somewhat routine, painting, flooring. So there's areas that we kind of rely on end-of-year funding, where John puts in his white papers, this is what I could do, and then at the end of the year, there's always a surplus, so we get a couple million, and he runs out and does some more projects that we've deferred. And whether it's, and as you know, even the new buildings have some warts on them, and the old buildings, show their age. So our team is very, very busy trying to keep them running and needs the appropriate funding. And John will probably be briefing you in the future about some things that you can do to help him.
No, thank you. I just think it's a point for the board to take into consideration moving forward, especially with budget and funding as we continue to grow. That's going to be, I'm sure, a hot topic in the years to come. So I appreciate what you and your team have done in the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Good.
I just want to say thank you, Josh. I know that Manchester Middle's track is going to get done in April, and I'm really excited about that, so I can stop bothering you about that particular issue. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We're excited about that one too.
I love your caveat about that particular issue. Any other questions for Mr. Davis? Let him go. Right. Well, that's all of the presentations that we have for this afternoon. School board members, are there any other announcements or comments? Go ahead, Ms. Chatters.
So I just wanted to thank everyone who let me in the building this morning when I was dropping donuts for all our school counselors. So those of you in the Dell District who got your "we could not do not without you," I appreciate all of you. Yes, it's corny, but it was all I could get. I could only think of that. But I appreciate all our school counselors. They're doing yeoman's work for a large population of students. And if you can do something nice for your school counselor this week, please do so. And also, if anyone had any questions about budget that did not able to attend any of our budget sessions, feel free to email the board with your questions or your recommendations, and we will respond accordingly. And I think that was about it. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other announcements? Yes.
So I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow night is our final budget session. I know y'all are excited about giving it 35 times. So this is the final one. This is the most exciting one. It will be at Midlothian Middle School, 6:30 p.m. Be there with all your questions or not. No, please come. Please have your questions ready. We want to answer them. That's all. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you so much. And now with that kind of teaser, I might show up, like what kind of excitement is going to be there. The next school board budget session will be held next Tuesday, February 13, 2024, at 4 p.m. here in the county public meeting room. It will be followed by a business meeting at 6:30. Public hearings for both the superintendent's proposed budget and capital improvement plan will be held at the start of that business meeting. And if there is no further business, we just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Madam Clerk, would you please call roll on the motion?
Dominique Chatters.
Aye.
Stephen Pronto.
Aye.
Lisa Hudgens.
Aye.
Ann Coker.
Aye.
Dot Heffron.
Aye. The motion carries. The February 6, 2024 School Board Budget Work Session is adjourned.